Welcome back, everyone. Oh, for real? YouTube likes me? Hi, Samiwa. Thank you for checking us out over on YouTube's. Oh, so many tech problems. You'd think mercury was in the Gatorade. Let's get started with headlines. Let's just get into it, because, you know, who knows when the stream's gonna crash. And we're muted.
Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
I'm Amy Goodman.
In Lebanon, at least 12 people were killed, nearly 3.
Yes, we're gonna talk a lot about that. That's pretty much the main story today, is the pager explosion going on. We've got two different. We've got Democracy Now! And Breaking Points covering it to get us started.
3,000 people injured Tuesday afternoon when electronic pagers used by members of Hezbollah exploded at the same time at 3:30 in the afternoon.
Bizarre.
The simultaneous blasts set off fear and panic in Beirut and across southern Lebanon and left hospitals overwhelmed. Hezbollah blamed Israel, vowed to retaliate, raising fears of a broader regional war. Reuters reports Israel's Mossad spy agency managed to plant explosive devices in pagers bought in recent months by Hezbollah from a company in Taiwan. Victims of the attack included a 10-year-old girl named Fatima Jafar Abdullah, who was killed when her father's pager exploded. Iran's ambassador to Lebanon, Mujtaba Amani, lost an eye to an exploding pager. Hezbollah relied on pagers for communication, in part to avoid Israel's surveillance of other communication networks. Lebanese lawmakers condemn the attack as an act of terrorism. After headlines, we'll go to Beirut, to Geneva, and Boston for the latest. Top Biden administration officials quickly distanced themselves from Tuesday's pager attack in Lebanon. This is State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller.
I can tell you that the U.S. was not involved in it. The U.S. was not aware of this incident in advance, and at this point, we're gathering information.
On Tuesday, Vice President Kamala Harris defended the Biden administration's support of Israel throughout its assault on Gaza. During an interview with the National Association of Black Journalists in Philadelphia, Harris also cited her support for President Biden's decision in May to temporarily pause the delivery of 2,000-pound bombs to Israel. Harris was questioned by reporter Eugene Daniels of Politico.
But what do you say to those that say that's not enough, that stopping the 2,000-pound bombs the one time wasn't enough, that this administration, your possible administration, has to do more?
Well, we are doing the work of putting the pressure on all parties involved to get the deal done. But let me be very clear also. I support Israel's ability to defend itself.
Just last month, the Biden administration approved $20 billion in additional weapon sales to Israel, including...
Shut the fuck up. Like, is she stupid? Does she just not understand what's happening? Or is it just bought and paid for talking points?
But what do you say to those that say that's not enough, that stopping the 2,000-pound bombs the one time wasn't enough, that this administration, your possible administration, has to do more?
Well, we are doing the work of putting the pressure on all parties involved to...
How? We are doing the work of putting pressure on all parties involved. Really? How about you stop sending weapons to Israel?
Get the deal done. But let me be very clear also. I support Israel's ability to defend itself.
Just last month, the Biden administration
In the last year, show me where Israel was actively defending itself. How has anything that they've done been in defense? You want to keep the Iron Dome? Like, fine. We already pay for that. We subsidize their fucking health care. And now we're sending billions and billions in military aid. To slaughter people. To massacre children. And even, you know, they're like, with this pager attack, it's like, okay, well, they were, you know, members of Hezbollah. Like, I don't care. I don't care. Israel doesn't have the right to be a terrorist state.
Administration approved $20 billion in additional weapons sales to Israel, including advanced air-to-air missiles and fighter jets. In Gaza, at least 20 Palestinians have been killed and 54 wounded over the past 24 hours, including at least 8 people who were killed in an Israeli airstrike targeting a school sheltering displaced civilians in Gaza City's Shijaya neighborhood. Another attack on a civilian car near Rafah in southern Gaza killed 2 Palestinians and wounded several others. The United Nations is warning Burma is plumbing the depths of a human rights abyss as the military regime intensifies the killings and arbitrary arrests of tens of thousands of civilians since seizing power in a coup over 3 years ago. The gruesome findings were part of a new report by the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, which detailed that many of those detained by the Burmese military are children taken from their parents. Dozens of those children have died in custody. This is UN Rights Office spokesperson Liz Throssell.
Since the coup on the 1st of February 2021, at least 5,350 civilians have been killed. More than 3.3 million displaced, and over half the population are living below the poverty line, primarily due to military violence.
Lawmakers in the Republic of Georgia have approved legislation to begin a sweeping crackdown on LGBTQIA people and organizations. The so-called Family Values and the Protection of Minors Law, approved Tuesday, will outlaw pride events, LGBTQ+ gatherings, and even displays of rainbow flags. Tamarja Kelly is director of Tbilisi Pride in Georgia's capital.
Our main aim was always to be very outspoken and loud on LGBTQ issues. Every year we used to hold a Pride Week. We tried to hold Pride marches. We held successfully Pride festivals, conferences and film screenings. And now we are already at the risk that we cannot hold any events really. And this law will make it legally impossible, not just physically and politically impossible, but also legally.
Back in the United States, Republican senators have once again blocked legislation that would protect access to in vitro fertilization and require health insurers to cover the fertility treatment. The Right to IVF Act was sponsored by Illinois Democratic Senator Tammy Duckworth, who personally struggled to become pregnant before turning to IVF to conceive her children.
Now, that freedom to get reproductive care is at risk for millions of other women whose most desperate hope in the world is to have a little one of their own. Make no mistake, that isn't some future nightmare. This is our present reality.
In more reproductive rights news, ProPublica reports at least 2 women in Georgia died after they could not access legal abortions and timely Medicare in their state. Amber Thurman suffered a fatal infection after doctors refused to treat a rare complication from a medication abortion. And Candy Miller died from medication abortion complications after her family said she didn't visit a doctor, quote, due to the current legislation on pregnancies and abortions. We'll have more on this story later in the broadcast. In Texas, hundreds of homes remain under evacuation orders in the Houston suburb of Deer Park, more than 2 days after an SUV struck a pipeline valve station, triggering a massive explosion that rattled homes and businesses, sending a column of fire and smoke into the sky that was visible more than 10 miles away. The pipeline containing natural gas liquids burned for a second straight day and into the night Tuesday. Here in New York, music mogul Sean Diddy Combs was denied bail and will remain in jail until his trial after pleading not guilty Tuesday to racketeering, conspiracy, sex trafficking, and other charges. Prosecutors accused Combs of repeatedly assaulting several women, drugging and coercing women and men to perform sexual acts, and being part of a criminal organization that engaged in sex trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and other crimes since at least 2008. Wow. He'll appear in court again today. In Atlanta, prosecutors on Tuesday dropped all money laundering charges against 3 activists who are accused of misusing a bail fund to support protests against Cop City, a multi-million-dollar police training complex. It will be the largest in the country. Atlanta Solidarity Fund organizers Marlon Kautz, Adele McClain, and Savannah Patterson are still facing racketeering charges as part of a sweeping RICO case that includes at least 58 other Stop Cop City activists indicted last year. Advocates celebrated the victory, writing in a statement, quote, "From the beginning, we knew these charges were not based on any evidence, but were instead politically motivated and intended to target a social movement," they said. And in Washington, D.C., the Senate Judiciary Committee held a hearing on the rise of anti-Muslim and anti-Semitic hate crimes across the United States. Republican senators used the forum to condemn recent student-led pro-Palestine protests at university campuses across the country and lashed out at the hearing's Arab American witness, Maya Berry, executive director of the Arab American Institute. This is Louisiana Republican Senator John Kennedy questioning Berry.
I think it's exceptionally disappointing that you're looking at an Arab American witness before you and saying you support Hamas.
You know what's disappointing to me?
I do not support Hamas. I do not support
You
Hamas.
don't support UNRWA. You don't support Hamas. You don't
I was very clear in my support for UNRWA.
Hezbollah, and you don't support Iran. You should hide your head in a bag.
Don't you? Asked the Louisiana Senator John Kennedy repeatedly as he conflated the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees, UNRWA, with Hamas. Following that exchange, committee chair, Democratic Senator Dick Durbin, gave Maya Berry a chance to respond.
It's regrettable that as I sit here, have experienced the very issue that we're attempting to deal with today. The introduction of foreign policy is not how we keep Arab Americans or Jewish Americans or Muslim Americans or Black people or Asian Americans, anybody safe. This has been regrettably a real disappointment, but very much an indication of the danger to our democratic institutions that we're in now.
And those are some of the headlines.
Wow.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report.
I'm Adrian Vixen. I know Marcus was watching that hearing, parts of the hearing this morning, and I caught pieces of it. Just like Lindsey Graham going after her, being like, so, you know, do you condemn Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran? And she says, well, it's complicated. And he's like, well, if you think it's complicated, then I don't need to listen to any other word that you have to say, and I won't. Like, it was ridiculous. Like, do you condemn them and think that they want to kill all the Jews? And she's like, well, it's kind of complicated, you know? And he's like, no, fuck you. I doubt he said fuck you. He essentially. All right, we're gonna stay on the pager attacks in Lebanon And Liz, if you have like a link about the walkie-talkie attacks, because I haven't seen any videos about it yet, but I'd be happy to cover it.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. In Lebanon, at least 12 people were killed, over 2,800 injured Tuesday when electronic pagers used by members of Hezbollah exploded at the same time. It was about 3:30 in the afternoon. Israel's widely believed to be behind the attack. Hezbollah vowed to retaliate against Israel as fears grow of a broader regional war. According to a report by Reuters, Israel's Mossad spy agency had managed to plant explosive material in a batch of pagers bought in recent months by Hezbollah. The pagers were sold under the name of the Taiwanese brand Gold Apollo, but the company said the pagers were actually made by a firm in
Thanks, Louie. I'll look.
that had a license to use Gold Apollo name. Victims of the attack included a 10-year-old girl who died when her father's pager exploded. The Iranian ambassador to Lebanon, Mujtaba Amani, was also injured by an exploding pager. The New York Times reports he lost an eye in the blast. The nature of the simultaneous attack shocked many in Lebanon.
What happened yesterday shocked us. It was unimaginable. No one could have thought that pagers could explode like that. The scene was shocking, how people were torn apart right in front of you.
Hezbollah relied on pagers in part to avoid Israel's surveillance of other communication networks like cell phones. Lebanese lawmaker Tony Frange Jr. condemned the attack as an act of terrorism.
Catastrophic repercussions for the crisis today, but this, as I have previously explained with several stations, is terrorism being practiced against Lebanon. And we, and I believe the majority of the Lebanese people, do not submit to the language of terrorism.
Earlier today, U.S. Secretary of State Tony Blinken said the U.S. did not know about nor was involved in what he called, quote, these incidents. Blinken made the comments in Cairo, Egypt, where he held a joint news conference with the Egyptian foreign minister and met with Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. Axios reports Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant called U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin shortly before the operation began.
I know, Mad. Welcome
We go
in.
now to Beirut, Lebanon, where we're joined by independent Lebanese journalist Mohammed Klait. Thanks so much for being with us, Mohammed. Can you describe the scene yesterday at 3:30?
Thank you very much for having me. We're still in a sort of state of shock of what happened. We didn't comprehend what was going on until later hours at night. What happened at 3:30 exactly? Certain sounds of small explosions were happening in the streets of the southern suburbs, specifically. People yelling at the street. People were in a state of shock. There were some of them who were not targeted by this terrorist attack were in a state of they were frozen in the streets, not knowing what was going on. It was very hard to comprehend, to make sense of what was happening. Then later on, people started helping the people who were injured, where these pagers exploded on their waists or even their hands or in front of their faces, taking them to hospitals because they were falling down on the street by the thousands. As the Minister of Health has counted, around 1,850 persons were injured in the southern suburbs alone, or in Beirut in general. There were around 2,000 persons who were admitted to hospitals, around 450 persons who were critically injured in the faces and the eyes. While on the street, people until now are still making sense of what was happening. even until late at night, people were still on the streets, still trying to get people who were injured from their houses, from the cafes, from the supermarkets, from all the civilian buildings where these pagers have exploded, trying to admit them to hospitals, trying to donate blood for those who have lost it.
And the number of people killed and wounded, and the people who were killed, we just reported on an 8-year-old girl. Can you go more into this, Mohammed?
Yes. So far, there have been 13 persons who were killed. 10 of them who are direct personnel of Hezbollah, whether they be affiliated with Hezbollah or they might be contractors as well. Because from what and there are also 3 other civilians, a mother and the little girl that you talked about, who was I think she's 9 years old, and there's also a young boy who's 11 years old who passed away late at night. Hezbollah, from what I know, that these pagers are used by Hezbollah basically by the people who are medics, who work in logistics, not the people who work. Very few of them who work in the military sector of Hezbollah use these pagers.
I'd like to bring a guest into the conversation who is an expert on investigating human rights abuses, Ramzi Kais, Human Rights Watch researcher investigating human rights abuses in Lebanon. He's joining us from Geneva. Ramzi, thanks so much for being with us. Can you explain what you understand technically happened and talk about it in the context of an international human rights framework?
Thanks, Amy, and thanks for having me. As you noted, and as Mohammed noted, yesterday there was scenes of just chaos and shock in Lebanon as thousands of pagers exploded simultaneously across the country, resulting in thousands of people being injured. According to the Ministry of Health, at least 12 people have been killed. This includes 2 children and 8 workers, and at least 2,800 people have been injured. Now, photos and videos that we reviewed that were taken by witnesses to the attack or victims
good to see you.
Showed pagers exploding in public places such as grocery stores or supermarkets, and other videos that appeared to be linked to the attack that took place, taken from emergency rooms, showed adults and children in emergency rooms with truly severe, traumatic, and penetrating injuries. We saw injuries to the head, to the torso, to the limbs, with many people who had decapitated fingers, in addition to other injuries that appear to be consistent with the
I've got so many windows open right now.
Of high explosives.
Good morning, Cam.
Now, we know that Hezbollah, in a statement that they issued, said that these pages had belonged to various units and institutions within Hezbollah. They blamed the Israeli government. And we know from the various media reports that have come out, with citing former Israeli officials and U.S. officials saying that Israel is responsible for the attack. But the Israeli military has not commented as of yet, at least according to my knowledge. Look, certainly there needs to be a full and prompt investigation into how the attack unfolded that should be conducted. But what we know from the perspective of international humanitarian law on the way in which this attack took place, the law of armed conflict is clear. It prohibits the use of booby traps or other apparently harmless portable devices that civilians could be attracted to, or that civilians use precisely in order to avoid the harm that we saw unfold in Beirut yesterday, with the devastating scenes of thousands of people being rushed to the hospital at the same time, including children, including civilians. When an explosive device is used or implanted in something such as a pager, where this device, its location cannot be reliably determined, where the means of attack or the method in which the attack takes place cannot differentiate between civilians or combatants, it cannot be directed at a specific military target, and
The definition of terrorism
would strike military targets and civilians alike without distinguishing between them. This is an unlawfully indiscriminate attack, and it's
definitionally terrorism.
And there needs to be accountability for this violations and for other violations, because as we've seen, there has been continued impunity for violations of the laws of war.
This is turning into a revolution.
The Ferret King subscribed to your channel for 11 months.
Indiscriminate attacks on civilians, widespread use of white phosphorus included on populated
Thank
areas,
you for
and
the
the use of US weapons unlawfully against aid workers. And without accountability for such violations, they will continue with impunity. We've previously called on various countries such as the US and other countries to suspend arms sales and military assistance to Israel in light of the fact that they could be used unlawfully in violations of IHL, as we are seeing unfold in the country.
An NSA whistleblower, Edward Snowden, tweeted following the attacks, quote, "What Israel has just done is, via any method, reckless. They blew up countless numbers of people who were driving, meaning cars out of control, shopping, your children are in the stroller standing behind them in the checkout line, etc. Indistinguishable from terrorism." Ramzi, your response?
Yeah, I mean, in the videos that we reviewed, you could clearly see these devices go off in supermarkets, where civilians were nearby, the children were nearby, and the attacks happen at the same time. And so, when you use explosive devices that are not able to distinguish between or specifically target a military object, then they're indiscriminate and could cause harm to civilians as well as the military target. That would amount to an indiscriminate attack, and that is unlawful under the laws of war. And should be investigated as a violation of IHL. And for those reasons, there needs to be not just an investigation, but accountability for such violations, or we will continue to see violations unfold with impunity.
On Tuesday, European Union Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell warned about the risk of a broader regional war.
I was in Lebanon before coming to Emirates. I was visiting the United Nations troops in the border. When I came there, the level of danger was increasing, and I see the troops going to their barracks. Certainly, there is a possibility of the war be spilling over, not only to Lebanon, but also it's already being important fire in the Red Sea, where we, the European Union, has deployed a Navy mission in order to protect the freedom of navigation. The risk of a spillover is not from yesterday, it's from the beginning. And we have to do all our efforts in order to try to avoid the regionalization of the war in Gaza.
So that's Josep Borrell, EU chief, the European Union. Rami Khouri is also with us in Boston, Palestinian-American journalist, senior public policy fellow at the American University of Beirut. Rami, you have repeatedly said you do not believe what was happening in Gaza would lead to a broader regional war. What are your thoughts today on what happened yesterday?
You have said some bullshit. So what are your thoughts now?
And where this is all headed?
Yeah, thanks for having me. There's so many dimensions to this, and most of the discussion that...
AC says, sorry, I'm driving. I was on the phone for a minute there. How is everyone? How is everyone? Good time to check in. I hope everyone's doing fantastic. I'm doing okay. Trying not to stress out about some family drama. Nomad says Israel is trying to get a regional war going and drag the US into it. 100% correct, Nomad. Absolutely. Chat, I hope you're doing okay. On a scale of 1 to 10, where would you put yourself? I'm like a 6. Like physically and mentally, I'm feeling like pretty good. Like I'd be like an 8, but like the family drama has me like stressed. And so I'm like, well, yeah. Liz, you're a 5? Oh, baby. You gotta get those numbers up. Numbers go up, right? Not bad, but midday today too. Yeah, yeah. Kind of mid. All right, we're gonna finish this piece up and then let's see, 5 or 6, but that's not far from baseline. Yeah, I feel that. Like, it's not bad, but it's just not good. You know, classic Wednesday. 6.5 for child drama. So you're doing better than most of us, and child drama sucks. But, you know, I'm like, you know, with the other things that are going on in your world, things are going pretty good, Cammy. Yeah, okay, otherwise I'm like a 9, exactly. I don't want to spill all your tea, but Cammy's having some fun in her life, and we love that for her. We love that. Okay, I did find from Al Jazeera the new wave of device explosions across Lebanon breaking from like an hour ago. So we will have that up after we finish this, talking about the pager attacks. So yeah, multiple terrorist attacks from Israel into Lebanon. I don't see any links on the YouTube chat. Are you in the right chat? Yeah, it might. Like, I don't know what the settings are on YouTube. YouTube's a little weird. But yeah, I've got Al Jazeera. And then let's see, where's the pop out? Okay. I'm having some tech issues today. My OBS is acting silly. Anyhow. Oh, it's probably only mods. I can make you a mod. Another new girl. Glass Art Museum. YouTube keeps freezing up on you. Uh-oh. But Twitch is okay? That's not good. No, everyone does not want to be a mod, but if, you know, if somebody does want to be a mod, we can, you know, we'll talk about it. But yeah, I was, for Liz, trying to post links into the YouTube chat, and I'm like, I think only mods can post links. Twitch is doing good. YouTube is a little laggy. That's weird. Wonder if it's because I have it on ultra low latency. Yeah, you gotta have a good temperament and like a lot of patience and dedication. Modding is hard work. Okay, let's finish up this piece. Yeah. I thought that was funny. She was like, so you said that would not lead to a broader regional war. What are your thoughts today?
Would lead to a broader regional war. What are your thoughts today on what happened yesterday and where this is all headed?
Subtle Amy shade.
Yeah, thanks for having me. You know, there's so many dimensions to this, and most of the discussion that we're all involved in is based on speculation and assumptions, and we have to be really careful to wait till we get verifiable facts, and then we can have a better idea. But for the moment, I think I would say the following. I still believe that Hezbollah, Israel, Iran, Hamas, and others want to avoid a all-out, free-for-all war between people in the region, which would probably include the U.S. if Iran gets involved. We saw a couple of months ago that Israel cannot defend itself by itself. It needs Arab support. It needs big-time American support on the...
I'm sorry, Israel cannot defend itself? What the fuck are you talking about, dude?
The spot, and it needs significant aid of money and weapons and
oh yeah,
so,
poor Israel. Poor small bean Israel. Maybe if they stopped occupying Palestine, nobody would have a fucking problem with them.
I believe an all-out regional war is going to be avoided because everybody realizes it wouldn't solve anything. It would just create massive suffering and more openings for terror groups and armed non-state actors as well, etc. That's what happens when you have chaos. What we do have is a regional low-intensity conflict going on. It's been going on for about a year or so, and Hezbollah and Israel are the key points of this, but Hamas is involved, the Ansarullah, the Houthis in Yemen are involved, and others. Iran indirectly is involved, and the U.S. indirectly through Israel is involved. What the Israeli attack using the pagers did is completely throw out the rule book on two things. One, as the previous guest said, the rules of war are irrelevant. They've always been irrelevant to Israel and the Zionist movements before the creation of Israel. They've done whatever they needed to do, they say, to protect themselves. The world says there's rules of wars to deal with that. But the Israelis have always ignored it. But they've also now thrown out the rules of engagement that Hezbollah and Israel have applied really since 2006, the last big war between them. I was in Beirut for that, and I experienced it, and I know the feeling that's prevalent all over Lebanon now is something I've experienced several times. And that was the point of what the Israelis wanted to do. They wanted to traumatize and terrorize the entire civilian population. They wanted to shock the Hezbollah institutions, and they wanted to basically destabilize the country to the point where if the Israelis wanted to go into South Lebanon in a big way, they would lay the groundwork for that. But at the same time, I think you have to keep remembering, in the last 3-4 months, we've had Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas, Israel, and the Ansarullah in Yemen with their supersonic missile, or whatever it's called, the big-time missile that went right into Israel undetected from Yemen. They've all been broadcasting, showcasing their technical capabilities. In other words, sending a message to the other that we want to avoid a full war because we have huge capabilities that we haven't used yet, and this is something you all want to avoid. Israel just did its part in that drama, showing the capabilities that it has. The thing that is fascinating to me and important and still unclear is that Israel had to prepare for this months and months ahead of time. And we'll get more details on that soon. But this suggests that this kind of an operation was probably the prelude to a big land and air attack, I'm assuming. But because they wouldn't just do this by itself and drop it probably. But we'll see. We don't know the details. But the Israelis have talked about Hezbollah for several years as their main threat, their main concern in the region. Hamas and others are secondary. They see Hezbollah both as a threat because of its power and its disruption in the north of Israel, and because of its very direct links with Iran. And they've talked about trying to break it up, destroy it, push it back from the border. They keep coming up with all kinds of different ideas, none of which are clear, and almost none of which are within its capabilities. So there's so many unknown factors, but we can say that all sides have tremendous capabilities, technological and other. They're prepared to use them. They're prepared to risk an all-out war in the region, which they would try to contain in the region without getting, say, the U.S. and Iran involved. And we don't know if this is all, if the Israelis did this mainly to put pressure on the Lebanese and Hezbollah to accept the Israeli terms for the new terms of engagement, which is to push Hezbollah back from the Lebanon-Israel border about 10 miles or so. It's possible that this is just a short-term measure that Israel is trying to achieve. So I think we have to take all of these things into consideration. The last point I make is nothing that happened yesterday and today or in the last few months is really new.
All right, AC, get some rest.
The scale of it is much bigger than anything that's happened before. Israel and Hezbollah and others have used technology to kill each other and terrorize each other for decades. Terrorizing civilians is a stable Israeli policy for many years. None of it is really new, but the scale of it now is what's kind of scary. And because the Israel-U.S. combination is now actively exchanging fire with 5 or 6 parties all around the Middle East and facing a huge global swell of support for a ceasefire in Gaza and for a Palestinian state. There are serious political pressures that might even influence the American presidential election outcome, possibly in the swing states. These are signs that the scale of the actions and the scale of the consequences are far higher than ever before. And if you take it, you say, why is this? I would say this, the one main reason, there are many, but the one main reason is that the U.S. and the Western world has allowed the right-wing Israeli governments of the last 15, 20 years to do anything they want in terms of settlements, imprisoning thousands of Palestinians, killing people, now a plausible genocide. Israel can do anything it wants, kill as many people, ignore as many laws, terrorize as many people as it wants, dehumanize as many people as it wants. It will suffer no consequences. This is something quite extraordinary, and the world has to somehow come to grips with this.
I wanted to go back to Beirut for a moment. Victims of Israel's pager attack included, I guess she's 10 years old, a little girl named Fatima Jafar Abdullah, killed when her father's pager exploded. And now also confirmed a young boy named Bilal Khanj has not survived his injuries after the Israeli pager attack in Lebanon. He becomes the second child to be killed. And I wanted to go back to the journalist Mohammed Klait to ask about how widespread these pagers are in Lebanon and about the use of pagers specifically to avoid Israel's surveillance of specifically cell phones.
Okay, so there are two catches in this. The first part is that this new batch that Hezbollah has ordered for these pagers, as you have mentioned before, that it's a Taiwanese-made pager, but they got it from a Bulgarian company that uses the same name of the Taiwanese company, or has the rights to use the name. As the investigations or journalistic investigations have shown, that Israel has intercepted this cargo of around 4,000 to 5,000 pagers, and they have tampered with it and detonated them alongside placing eavesdropping devices inside of them. And as Dr. Khouri has mentioned, that it was a weapon that they wanted to use during a full-on scale attack, or maybe a land attack on Lebanon. But as we have seen 2 days ago, this plot was exposed by certain technicians in Hezbollah, and you know, my personal sources have said that because this plot was exposed and they were working on getting rid of them and doing an investigation that
thanks
they were
for
doing
being
on
here.
these
Thanks
pages,
for chatting.
that's why Israel has detonated these pagers in a sudden way and caused this chain attack on people and on civilians and military personnel of Hezbollah. And
Mohammed, just a quick correction.
Second catch, why do they?
On, it was a Budapest-based, it was a Hungary-based company. I'm looking at the Reuters report. The model of pagers used in detonations in Lebanon were made by a Budapest-based BAC Consulting. The Taiwanese pager firm Gold Apollo said on Wednesday, adding it had only licensed out its brand to the company and was not involved in the production of the devices. But keep going, Mohammed.
Yes, I'm sorry. I think I said Bulgaria, not Budapest. Yeah, and as for the second part, why do they still use the pagers? Hezbollah's General Secretary Hassan Nasrallah has said before that there's a huge danger in using cell phones, smartphones that are connected to the Wi-Fi and to the global internet, on the safety of the combatants of Hezbollah in the south, as well as the civilian usage of these phones when they are filming in videos the locations of where the missiles and the rockets are coming out and in the fields and in the valleys and so on, because this is when it's being spread on social media or being distributed and shared on WhatsApp or other applications. This is giving intelligence information for the Israelis, whom are later on bombing these locations of the videos that are being widespread. So there were internal orders by Hezbollah to not use smartphones, to try to disconnect them when possible from the internet and from the Wi-Fi connections. So they have relied on these on this new batch of pagers that they had, but as I've mentioned, that they were tampered with and intercepted and tampered with by the Israeli Mossad. And we saw what happened yesterday.
And are people still going to hospitals to give blood?
And I wanted to also. And I just wanted to add something for what Mr. Kais has said concerning that Israel is using booby traps, which are illegal based on international law. That during the 90s, I still remember when we used to go to the south during the Israeli occupation of the southern Lebanon, Israel used to drop baby toys that were had booby traps, and they have small explosive devices. They used to drop them from military helicopters in the valleys, on the streets of the villages where little kids were used to pick them up, and then they would explode. That's why we have seen many people from my generation from the 90s that their arms are amputated or they are missing legs because of this illegal usage or illegal forms of warfare.
And the hospital, the issue of the hospitals and people going to give blood. Again, thousands and thousands of people have been injured, nearly 3,000, it's believed at this point, Mohammed.
3,000 people, almost 3,000 people injured, and this was from the attack yesterday.
Yes, and And as I've mentioned,
there's another attack that we are about to get to.
These pagers are used by medical personnel, logistics, some of the military personnel of Hezbollah. I know some of the persons that I talked to yesterday that they were at a clinic, and two of the doctors had these pagers, and they blew up on their waist. One of them had his fingers amputated, the other had minor injuries. And we've seen this huge influx of people trying to donate blood because, as the Ministry of Health has said, there are roughly 2,800 persons who were injured. As I've mentioned as well, 1,850 only in Beirut. The huge state of chaos or medical chaos that we have seen in the city, particularly, is out of this world. It's sort of like something from a sci-fi movie, but we have seen this huge state of cohesion and support from Lebanese in general. That they have went from different parts of the country, from
100 Adrian 69 love 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 Liminox cheered 100 bits.
In the south.
Oh my gosh! And you upgraded your sub. I see a little badge on there.
To donate blood for the people who were injured, creating these blood banks.
Liminox, thank you so much for being is that a tier 3?
I'm not sure. Putting chemicals in the water that 153. Amazon cheered 153. I'm not sure. Flatty 100 LFD. Random Lazy Lizards Lounge cheered 100 bits. Cheer 100 Adrian 69 Blankies Adrian 69 Blankies Adrian 69 Blankies Adrian 69 Blankies Liminox cheered 100 bits.
Friggin' frog crap! Won't you fight the frogs? It's not funny! I'm gonna say it real slow for you. Place point.
All right, what can we do that's not going to get me clapped?